my fellow Americans, are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Good morning, it's Update Friday. I'm CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice, and your host today, bringing you some incredible news and changes. It truly is amazing. Virtually every day something new is happening. And just always remember, we hold the trump card. We can do this. Together we can win. So I want to start out just showing you some things that I read today in this morning's paper. This is just so classic, and it just stresses what is really happening. And these are now articles, so it's starting to get into the mainstream media. Here's an article by Christopher Rugaber from the Associated Press, and he says the country is starting to regain the $16 trillion of wealth they lost in the Great Recession. However, most of that money is going to the top 1%. The fact is, most of the middle class, you and me, most of us, our wealth is in equity in homes. 2/3 of our wealth in the middle class is home equity, and now that has fallen by 1/3. So in this nation, the people, the middle class, have lost 50%. That feels about right. It just feels like we've been slapped sideways, where the others, the top level percent, who have their wealth in stock market and bonds, things like that, they have just gained greatly. In fact, another article by Michael Hiltzik, this is both in my Press Democrat paper in Sonoma County this morning, it talks about how, where's the workers' payoff? Corporate earnings, how they've fared compared to workers' wages as a percentage of the economy. And it used to be around 4 to 5% back in the 50s to 70s. In the 80s, it fell to about 3%. Now it's 11%. And when it says, since the recovery, since the 2008 recovery, when they've been foreclosing all the homes, people have been losing their down payments in equity, they're just being thrown out on the street, and as we're going to talk about, it's all illegal. I'm going to show you some facts today that'll probably going to blow your mind. So while that's going on, the top 1%, they captured 52% of all income growth. And that's normally, just since 2008, it's been 93%. So the top 1% got 93% of the gain of that $16 trillion wealth they're talking about coming back. Where you and I, we got nothing. In fact, our actual purchasing power has fallen 9% from 1999 to 2011. Oh, and I love this comment. This is in the article in today's paper. So it says, J.P. Morgan Chase chairman Jamie Dimon says he expresses confidence that whatever happens, the company is going to be fine. No kidding. The company, let's never forget, owns the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is a private banking institution which creates credit for private profit, and every dollar they print, every Federal Reserve note in your pocket comes with debt that you and I have to pay. And that's why they own the planet and we're losing. So, to move forward with today's issues, I've categorized, there's so much updating. First, I want to talk about corruption. And then I want to talk about what the banks are, the future, what they're thinking of doing and what they're moving towards and what's going on in the banking industry. And then I want to talk about real estate predictions and give you some of my feedback about what I think about those predictions. And then we're going to look at some of the things that people are doing. They're sharing the things with me. They're petitions, and boy, you just got to see what I've been doing. The document fraud update. You know, I say things like every document they create is fraudulent. When you actually see that in front of your very eyes, it's really pretty powerful. So the first thing we want to move into is corruption. Let's look at this corruption. So here's some corruption. The Untouchables documentary, hopefully you've seen it by now, and it's linked on the website. It's on the YouTube. You can watch it there if you like. And the fact of the matter is, many of these whistleblowers have actually been in lawsuit. In this case, he has. Turns out that after the Untouchables showed, this poor guy's judgment, he won. The bank appealed. It's been overturned. The appeals court has ruled in favor of the banks. So there you go. This is corruption, and I've got something about judges that you're going to hear in this section. You're going to really love this. You're going to love this link, I swear. It's pretty cool what people are sending me, and I do so much appreciate it. Keep them coming. So the other thing that happened is that when the Congress people watched the Untouchables, they started writing to Eric Holder at the Department of Justice saying, okay, you claim Lanny Breuer stated that they consulted with experts and decided not to prosecute. So name them. Who are those experts? Tell me who they are. The DOJ is just brushing them off. Pfft, they're not going to tell them. Here, you can hear Eric Holder yourself.
The concern that you have raised is one that I frankly share. And I'm not talking about HSBC now, because that maybe that not be appropriate. But I am concerned that the size of some of these institutions becomes so large that it does become difficult for us to prosecute them when we are hit with indications that if you do prosecute, if you do bring a criminal charge, it will have a negative impact on the national economy, perhaps even the world economy. And I think that is a function of the fact that some of these institutions have become too large. Again, I'm not talking about HSBC. This is just a more general comment. I think it has an inhibiting influence impact on our ability to bring resolutions that I think would be more appropriate. And I think that is something that you all need to consider. So the concern that you raised is actually one that I share.
Give me a break. Here's the point. HSBC is one of the worst offenders. I'm reminded of the drug money that they're laundering. And the fact is, last year, July 2012, I have it linked on the Homeowner for Justice website under bank corruption, and that is the subcommittee on laundering, money laundering, and how HSBC has like trillions in their banking system around the planet. And the fact is, he's actually admitting he's not up to the job. And that's the bottom line. So get rid of him. Let's dump him. The fact is, we need someone in there not afraid and not buying into the myth that if they prosecute fraud, that it would somehow hurt the world system. Are you kidding? What it's actually going to do is stop the fraud, put the people back in charge, get back into rule of law, and that is going to expand the economy. The people can start to, instead of being afraid that no matter what they do, they've lost to some fraudulent gangster, that they can actually move forward in a lawful, honest way. He's completely bought off by the banks, and so he's going to say whatever he wants. And this is what you have to understand. This is where these guys come from, both Eric and Lanny. Don't forget, they used to work for Covington and Burling, which is the largest Washington, D.C. firm that represents the banks. That's the firm that wrote the MERS opinion. All that stuff's linked on the website. I haven't even really talked much about it, but because that's basically water under the bridge. However, it is historical, and if you ever want to read up on that, go look at the crisis of fraud. Anyway, moving forward, here's what's happening in court. This is Wells Fargo fabricated and altered mortgage documents on a mass basis. Okay, so this is coming out in lawsuits that actually, and I want to read some of this to you. It says the robo-signing scandal. Now remember, robo-signing is forged notarized signatures. So they've notarized forged signatures. They call that robo-signing a dismissive term. It's actually fraudulent notarization and forgery. It's actually fraud. I'll say the F word. So the robo-signing scandal was merely a tip of the iceberg. That's the myth the banksters are saying. But they're saying, well, occasionally we made a mistake. Okay, occasionally. Wells Fargo's own actions say the reverse. It has been doctoring documents in-house for over 15 months for borrowers who are targeted for foreclosure. And so the contractors are stepping up. The whistleblowers, they're saying, hey, wait a minute. The contractor who worked at the Wells Fargo facility in Minnesota reports the bank engaged in systematic, large-scale alteration of mortgage notes and fabrication of related documents in preparation for foreclosure. And I'm going to show you what that looks like again today, so you can watch the workshop on the owner's statement of suspicious documents. It's a powerful statement, and I believe it is our ace in the hole as owners. We've got to step up, and we've got to get thousands of people to do this. And if and when we do, I believe we can halt this crisis and get some justice and restitution. I just have to read this to you. A team of roughly 100 temps, these are temp employees now, divided across 2 shifts, would review borrower notes, the IOU, to see whether they met a set of requirements the bank set up, and any that did not pass. Now notice this, I keep saying this, we're all saying this, and this is the truth, that any notes, loans, that you sign that turns into notes from the lenders are supposed to sell them from one to the other. Any that didn't pass the criteria Wells Fargo set up, and notes in securitized trusts were almost always failed. They went to another unit in the same facility, behind locked doors, and they would come back later with the review team to check the fixes and fabrications had been done correctly. Oh my God. This is the point. They're saying this now. We have to do something about it. I want to show you some of these kinds of fabrications. I'm telling you, I've been working on people's documents, analyzing the records for them, putting them in my spreadsheet. You can look at the workshop. But I want to bring to your attention, this is the kind of fake labels, fake titles that are being used. So you've got Wells Fargo Bank N.A. as trustee for ABFC 2006-09T2 Trust, ABFC Asset-Backed Certificate Series 2006-Opt2 by American, this is the signer, by American Home Mortgage Servicing, Inc., successor in interest to Option 1 Mortgage Corporation as attorney in fact. Now, here's the point. When you see something like this on your documents or on or your neighbor's documents or somebody's documents, you got to start thinking, is American Home Mortgage Servicing, Inc. still active, and was it active at the date this was filed in June 19, 2009? And is there a power of attorney? This is the attorney in fact. This is the forgery that Wells Fargo created. This is one of them that they forged. Okay, we just read about it. Now the whistleblower is coming out. Now you see an article. But look at this. This was done in 2009. And this is the way they created legal-looking documents and used them to foreclose. So this person, no doubt, is lost a home or is going to lose the home. And again, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter whether you lost it or whether you're fighting foreclosure, or whether you just started with a notice of default and got some stuff. The fact is, it's all fraud, it's all forgery. By the time you take any one of these items that I've talked about yesterday on this statement of suspicious documents, all these documents are defective. That is the point. So on the whistleblower, what we're going to do, it's great that this news is coming out. So I'm going to try to link that to the page so people can read the article. But the issue is we have to do something about it. And this is what we're doing. More corruption. We're not done with corruption yet, sorry. Nation Star. Now, Nation Star bought servicing rights from banksters, bankster gangsters, and the reason the banks have been selling their servicing rights by October 1st was so that they could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not in charge of that anymore, and so the consent judgment doesn't apply to me anymore. It's a straight workaround, step around of the legal constraints that the banks, the district court, and the OCC has been trying to put on the banks, and the banks are saying, okay, I know, we'll play the corporate game. They play the corporate shell game. We'll set up a wholly owned subsidiary, like NationStar, like Ocwen, Green Tree Servicing, pick one. They set them up offshore. All the operations are offshore virtually. Headquarters are definitely offshore, like in the Cayman Islands or something. And then they sell these servicing rights. And so then, I'm sorry, they do what they want. Is it any shock? This article seems like, oh, how could they do that? And here it is. NationStar's loan liquidations are a blatant abdication of the company's responsibilities as a server. Gee, what a shock. They're going to screw you every way you turn, and until the people and the media really get this, and the pension funds and all those investors, because that's who's complaining here. See, NationStar has not fulfilled its duties as master servicer, but rather has engaged in practices to enrich itself. Come on, it's all of us getting cheated. And so that's the owners, that's the investors, that's our pension funds. So here's a thought. Why don't we as activists go to our pension funds, go to our counties that run these pension funds and say, look, this is what they're doing. You help us stop them from doing this, and we can work together to fix it. I'm thinking on the fly, but these are good thoughts. Let's mull them over, feed them back to me. Let's figure out how we can do that. And I want to point out here, of course, this article goes on to say, the only party that appears to have benefited from the bulk note sales is NationStar itself. And again, this is no surprise to us fighting foreclosure, but it obviously the other entities that have not been fighting foreclosure just do not get it yet. How fraudulent and intentionally fraudulent. This is a conspiracy of fraud that it is, and it's up to us to share that with them. Okay, let's see. Oh, here's something that I got just this morning. Linda was so upset. She sent this from Florida because it turns out, we talk about the OCC settlement. Well, it was the Independent Foreclosure Review last year. And then, of course, they spent billions of dollars to the reviewers, the subcontractors that did that. And, of course, none came to the owners, virtually. And so then the OCC said, well, this isn't working. The bank says, I told you so. And, of course, the banks, stuck their fingers into the Independent Foreclosure Review, and whenever a worker found something that was wrong, like over and over and over and over and over, the bank said, oh, that doesn't count. And they kept changing the rules until nothing qualified. So in other words, no matter what you found, it didn't qualify. And that's why it didn't work, is because the banks are in it and manipulating it. So then the bank says, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll just settle at $9.5 billion. And of course, only about, we've already seen evidence, only about 20% is coming out of banks. 80% is coming out of the taxpayer, you and me, credit creation ad nauseum. So here, out of the bank settlement, guess who's getting paid out of that? The courts. So right down here, Florida's courts already got $5 million from the settlement. Became available February 1st. So the owners don't get anything, but the courts get something so that they can help foreclosures go faster. This is a sign of corruption. This is the point. It is the people against the powers that be, unfortunately. And this is what you're going to really love now that we're talking about the courts. Someone sent me a link to the roving room. It'll be linked on the comment section. This is where judges are judged. And you can go by circuit court, you can go by the state, and you'll notice that down here they list the bottom 10 judges, and here are the top 10 judges. And if you scroll down, you can see the comments, and you can pull up any judge, any state, and you can read what people are commenting about them. I thought you'd love that. And truly, people want to know, am I going to even be close to getting a fair deal when I go into court? And personally, I get feedback from all over the nation that they don't. The people do not get a fair deal. They don't get judges that look at the law. They don't get judges that listen to the evidence. They don't get judges that allow the evidence to be presented. They just get booted out and lose their homes. And that's an unfortunate truth, and I'm just telling you the feedback that I'm getting. Okay, let's move into banking news. What are the banks doing now? Get ready. Fannie and Freddie want to securitize loans and give it over to a new business firm. I've just got to read some of this to you. You can read the whole article yourself afterwards. Fannie and Freddie will form a joint venture for securitizing home loans. So let's keep securitizing. Let's not come up with anything else that might work better for the people. Let's just securitize them so we can all make a fortune off their property and their signatures. And that they could end up replacing Fannie and Freddie. This is what Ed DeMarco, acting director of the FHFA, we still have just an acting director, have you noticed? And he's still in charge. And this is what he's said. The overarching goal is to create something of value that could either be sold or used by policymakers as a foundational element of the mortgage market of the future. Now I've got a suggestion. Let's stop that nonsense. Let's set up state banks and public banks at the state, county, and city level, and let's let them partner with local, regional, private banks like credit unions and regional banks to provide mortgage financing that's held locally for the benefit of public benefit. So let's let our local public banks create credit that will go to finance mortgages, and then when we make our payments, it benefits us. How about that? Instead of everybody else on the planet feeding off the owners. Come on, we got to step up. We got to make this happen. So that's what's happening in Fannie and Freddie coming down the pike. And the fact of the matter is, these entities and consultants and banksters and the employees of these agencies sell it to our congresspeople. And the fact is, our congresspeople are just people. They cannot know everything. It is impossible. And so they listen to things that they are told, and their staff does this. So let's work on getting information to our congresspeople's staff members that are good counterbalances to these concepts, so that our congresspeople actually have a choice. I believe part of the issue, and I understand we talk a lot about them being bought off and that kind of thing, I think part of it is that's just all they're hearing. They don't even feel there's a choice. They don't have any other options, and they are just frankly too busy to try to figure out the options themselves. So that's up to us. We need, as owners, to step up and say, I'm going to dedicate a bit of my time, and I'm going to contact my congressperson with a solution, with a something else to consider when they're looking at making a decision on things like this. And of course, as we combine and do that together, and as a committee, maybe around the country, so that so we don't have to duplicate effort, then we can each share that with our own congresspeople, and do a wellspring, a grassroots effort to educate enough congresspeople. And again, remember, I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, Tea Party, it doesn't matter. The fact is, most of these people really are rational and really would listen if you actually presented them something to listen to that made sense. And so let's eliminate the labels, and let's start with the fact that we expect the people to listen to us. And if our representatives start listening, and there's enough constituents, if we do our ground roots organization right, they're going to listen. We're going to say, look, we've got 10,000 people in this county, the state, whatever it takes. We've got this organization that's really pushing for this. I think we would have more success than we might imagine. I'm telling myself too, trust me. Okay, here's what Wells is doing. We're still on banking news and the future. Wells is not feeling pressured to sell mortgage servicing rights. Interesting, considering they're doing such fraud. I'm sorry. But here's the point. They've not been charged yet with the fraud. It hasn't been biting on their toes yet, which we can change, and we plan to change. But the bank's goal is to sell 8 products per household. And the longer a customer has been with Wells, the more products they have with us. So here you go. Let's keep pushing to get people to move their money out of Wells Fargo. Why support the mega banks when they're full of fraud and corruption? And we know it's on many levels. It's not just the mortgages, but we know that their investments are in things that are against the people and for their personal private profits. I don't want to go into more of that stuff. You guys know more about it than I do, I'm sure. But Occupy has taken Move the Money on as one of their real efforts, and I have to agree with that. It's very expensive anyway to keep your money at Wells. I had my money at Wells. They just charge us up to yin yang, so we've moved to a credit union. I highly recommend that you do at least that. The credit unions have good bill pay programs and excellent no fee or low fee checking and savings accounts. So check out your local credit union. Move the money. Let's get out of these mega banks. Besides, we're trying to bring them down. And eventually I believe we'll win. So one more thing I wanted to share in banking news, and then we're going to move quickly into real estate, and then I've got to share with you the other actions and activities and things we've been discovering. Here's a banker. This is editor-in-chief at American Banker, and he's talking about beware a new banking bubble. And what he's mentioning is that, first off, I couldn't help but highlight this to remind myself to tell you, this is the traditional banking model. It's right here. You read it for yourself. It's called the 3-5-3 model. Pay 3% on the deposits, lend the money out at 5%, which of course they can't do right now, and be on the golf course at 3 p.m. Welcome to banking. If they actually worked, I might care a little bit more about the results for them. But this is the point. They don't. They manipulate the money. They manipulate the Fed. They manipulate the people, the loans. They make loans only if it's going to benefit them. Or not. The mega banks now can take the deposits and they can just go play on Wall Street and make way more than loaning you some money. That's why Fannie and Freddie have stepped up to become such large mortgage backers, because the banks aren't. They're just not going to do it, and they don't make any money at it, so why should they bother? So this is a perfect opportunity for the people to start pushing on a public bank solution to mortgages, home mortgages. Think about this. What if California passed a rule? What if every state said, okay, home mortgages where people have their homes cannot be securitized. You can't play around and screw around with them. It's going to be from public credit so that the payments go to benefit the public, which makes total sense. It's the homes we live in. And if that is viewed as a right, which many people view it as a right, that we have a right to have housing, then let's just say it has to be done with private credit. I mean, public credit creation on public banks. So when we make our payments, those interest rates can be held very low, like 2%, but that we all feed ourselves, and we can benefit from that payment plan. And skip these private bankers. Put them out of business. We really don't need them. That is the point. So you can read the rest of the article. But they're talking about the bubble, mergers and acquisitions. They're inflating their balance sheets. They're trying to do everything they can to generate fees, which is what got them into the problem in the first place. I remember years ago in early 2000s when the bubble was starting, the whole point was banks had stopped holding the loans and accepting a 30-year payment stream. We call that a portfolio loan. They were starting to securitize because they could make, gobs of money. They get the fees, they get the securitization fees, they get the fees on the creation of the loan. It's just goes on and on and on. It's an outrageous fee, and this is partly why the whole thing bubbled up, and now it's burst and has collapsed. And it's straight because the bank stopped underwriting and did it for the fee basis, for their own balance sheet. So now they've become a business that's against the benefit of the owners. So let's get public banks that are for the benefit of the owners. Okay, now let's go into some real estate predictions. I got a couple of predictions here, and we just chat about them real briefly. The first one is, will Wall Street buy into single-family rental craze? And now there's IPOs, initial public offerings. They're raising money on Wall Street to get investors into these real estate investment trusts. They're buying all these single-family homes all across the nation. You'll notice right down here, I wanted to point out, Pine River Capital Management has went public in December, raised $245 million. They've bought 2,500 homes. They want to buy 3,000 more. Right now, and the reason they do this and can do this is because of all the foreclosures. So when you combine the fraud foreclosure that has forced people out of their homes with fraud, they've lost their homes because the banks cheated, then they can't buy because Fannie and Freddie say, you don't qualify now for a loan. You're a bad person. You lost your home. Even if you sold it short, you can't qualify for a loan. So all those people are shoved out of the buyer pool. So prices collapse and more property is listed. Investors come in and swoop them up. They're going to hang on to them for the long term. These are rental real estate investment trusts. They're built on the rental income stream. They don't want to buy and sell them. They don't want to flip them. They want to hold them. And so what's happening is the housing inventory supply is being sucked up by large hedge funds. So here you got, despite the volume of single-family acquisitions in recent markets, this statement I just don't understand. Despite the volume of single-family acquisitions in recent months in some markets, the percentage of home for rent in the U.S. is not expected to materially change. Okay, and this is Suzanne Mistretta, Senior Director in Fitch's U.S. RMBS Group. So they are saying, despite the fact that thousands and thousands of these homes are now going into hedge funds as rental homes. For example, they talk about, Blackstone has the largest, and the second one is American Homes for Rent has already amassed 10,000 homes. So now they've got 10,000. You've got some other company that has 5,000, and they're the second largest buyer behind Blackstone. So I think Blackstone has 16,000. Okay, so now we've got 30,000, and admittedly, that's not yet a big number because there's about 130 million households in the country. That's multifamily condos, homes. And so, but it's growing. And in those markets, when they're sucking in 500 homes or 1,000 homes in one county or two counties, it makes a big difference in those areas specifically. How can they say this? How can they say that it's not going to materially change homes for rent? That's insane. And this is the analysis that a lot of people miss. They just read this stuff and they go, oh, I guess it sounds okay. No, it's not. It's just BS. And please understand that. So read what is written. Read these articles with a critical mind and don't accept what particularly these Fitch is a rating agency, isn't it? The fact is those guys said, oh, the mortgage-backed securities are great. Go for it. Everything they say, I would just ignore. I would just say, take the opposite. They're just liars from way back. And here's something else. This is again back to what is going into, oh, I forgot. We've got home prices expected to rise. Where's that? I want to show you this. Home prices are expected to rise. Sorry, I think that link got missed. So before we go into victory over Chase, home prices are expected to rise at least 3.3% annually through 2017. Okay, this comes to agents and brokers, and I don't understand why they would ever say that, other than they're taking last year, whatever happened last year, and they're just projecting that. My opinion, based on all the information that we share and look at, is that this may or may not be true. And don't bank on it. If it's coming out of a media source for agents and brokers, they're always going to say, oh, the future is rosy and bright. That's what they're going to say. When we're looking at, only Fannie and Freddie are back in the mortgages right now because the banks aren't going to make loans. And there really are no other places to make loans. And the price recovery is based on these hedge funds buying bulk homes for rent. And if and when either interest rates rise, they decide it's not that profitable, they back out of that market, the homeowners being locked out, the potential home buyers that would own or occupy, can't buy, then we can expect prices to fall. That's a realistic description of what we should be expecting over the next 2 or 3 years. We should expect, I happen to know personally, that tenants, toilets, and trash take a lot of the profits out of rentals. And it's just a matter of time before these hedge funds look at these rentals and go, you know something? This isn't working out like we'd put on paper. This is not a stock. This is not a bond. These are people. They're tenants. They have problems. They don't pay their rent. We have to evict them. They accumulate gobs of trash, and their toilets are always plugged up. I mean, that is the point. And this is why the rentals generally have always been done by small investor people. They buy 3 or 4 houses, and that is their little rental farm, and they manage those, and they do that personally, and over time, it's an income stream, and over time they've gained equity in those properties. Now you take hedge funds who are really only used to looking at stocks and bonds and being able to sell something quick, and if they didn't like it, even almost arbitraging price points. You don't play with houses like that, and you don't play with tenants like that. And many states like California have rules. If a tenant's been over there, lived there for a year, you can't get rid of them. You can't say, get out, I'm going to sell the house for 60 days. There's rules and laws. These are people's lives. And so I do expect that some of these hedge funds, at least, are going to rethink their strategies down the road. That would be natural and logical, probably in about 2 years. So that's 2015, right here in the middle of it. And so then they've got all these thousands of homes. So now guess what they're going to do? They're going to dump them on the market. So I don't believe this at all. And this is why you got to be really careful when you're looking at any article. Consider the source, consider what they're saying, and if they're looking back here, back in 1997 housing prices grew through. Back in 1997, loans were not securitized. There's just so many things wrong with this article. Anyway, read it at your leisure, and you'll understand why I say the things I say. I'm a broker. I've been doing real estate. I understand rentals. I have some, and we work with our tenants. And sometimes a tenant loses job or loses income, and so, rather than lose the tenant, we'll maybe adjust the rent. These are natural and logical management issues in rentals that these hedge funds are going to be facing. Okay, fighting back. Now, here we go. This is, what are we doing in fighting back? And one of the things that we're talking about is more fraud on the documents. And this is actually in a court deposition. I need to read this to you because this, again, goes right back to looking at the documents and exactly what did they say on your recorded documents. So the other was Wells Fargo, all their fake and made up stuff. And this is Washington Mutual. So you got to pay attention to remember I talk about the corporate shell game. If anything, the banks understand the corporate shell game probably the best on the planet. They create shell corporations, and they have all these stacks of ownerships and subsidiaries. So here's what Washington Mutual Bank was doing. Questions arise as to why, after April 4, 2005, Washington Mutual Bank FA continued doing business as Washington Mutual Bank FA, even though it had been legally renamed to Washington Mutual Bank. And according to the 2005 10K for Washington Mutual Inc., that Washington Mutual Bank FA had ceased to exist. So after April 5, 2005 to September 26, 2008, when the FDIC placed Washington Mutual Bank into receivership, Washington Mutual Bank made loans as lender and beneficiary in the name of the non-existent Federal Savings Bank, Washington Mutual Bank FA. Do you see how confusing and clever this is? This is how they're cheating. And so we have to be really extra sharp. We have to read every statement and everything that they say. So now, look at this. Look at this. The loans, and the foreclosures are questionable, if not downright fraudulent. Exactly. And see, here you go. FKA, that means formerly known as. So on December 12, 2006, the Market Risk Committee of Washington Mutual, Inc. documented their minutes and referred to Washington Mutual Bank as FKA, formerly known as Washington Mutual Bank FA. So you can read the rest of this article. The fact is, the proof is coming out that these banksters fraudulently created the foreclosure documents, which we've been, harping on for a year, and now we've got that proof. Here I wanted to show you this, another one of these documents that I've been documenting these foreclosures, filling out the spreadsheets, and in just right after this I'm going to show you what I've found for Recon Trust. So here's an example. Here's how they forge and the kinds of names that they use, just so that you start to understand. These are little examples I haven't used before because I didn't have them, so in the training. So here, for example, and these are all done in order of date. See, 3/8, 3/9, 4/17. This is all last year, 5/14. So all of these violated both the after 4/17. All of these violated OCC, the cease and desist order, and then the substitution after 4/4/2012. Anything filed after that violated the consent judgment from the banks, from the U.S. District Court on the banks. So here you've got a corporation assignment. They used MERS to do this, and they assigned it to, here you go again, the Deutsche Bank National Trust Company as trustee under the pooling and servicing agreement relating to Impact Secured Assets Corp. Mortgage Pass-Through Certificate Series 2007-2. It's an impossible beneficiary designation. So that's fake. Oh, and by the way, you've got it forged, because Lawrence, and when I document on these, anything that I say is forged, that's because I personally have recorded documents with different signature names, and they're linked on the suspicious signatures page on Homeowners for Justice. So now look down here. This is really interesting because first MERS assigns it to this. That's impossible. Then you have a notice of default. Now, many times, and I want to tell you, particularly on Recon Trust, all of their notice of defaults are boilerplate forms, and this is why they almost all of them on notice of defaults say Recon Trust Company NA as agent for the beneficiary, period. They all say that. They also say typically on the second page that the contact, see here, they've made the contact the same as the beneficiary, but they've only called it the contact here. And then it's care of Bank of America NA. And on their boilerplate form, they have two spaces. One is for that name that people just type in and plug in, and everything is care of Bank of America NA. So sometimes you'll have the name appear, this contact name being Bank of America N.A., care of Bank of America N.A., and in the boilerplate of virtually all of the notice of defaults I've seen, it calls the beneficiary, that Recon Trust as agent for the beneficiary is doing this notice of default in favor of MERS Inc. as beneficiary. The whole thing is BS, because the beneficiary is right here. It's the corporate assignment. Assuming that this beneficiary would have been legal, that's the beneficiary. But Recon Trust is filing notice of default as the agent of MERS as beneficiary. So the whole thing is an amazing compilation of legal sounding gobbledygook, and it's all fraudulent and forged. So here you've got, down here on the substitution of trustee, you've got this beneficiary, okay, Deutsche Bank, blah, 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 series 2007-2. Now you have this being signed by its attorney-in-fact, Bank of America N.A., successor by merger to Back Home Loan Servicing LP, FKA, formerly known as Countrywide Home Loan Servicing LP. And remember, this attorney-in-fact needs to have a power of attorney recorded in that county or recorded with the document. I have yet to get any attorney-in-facts, a power of attorney to prove the attorney-in-facts are true. I'm getting feedback saying we can't find it. So that's another thing I just wanted to point out. You got to read real carefully what they're saying, and the LP, the FA, the NA makes a big difference. Sometimes you're going to see Recon Trust Company with no NA. Sometimes Recon Trust Company NA. Sometimes them as agent for the beneficiary. These things make a difference, and this is what makes them fraudulent. They're creating all this stuff in that back room, just like we heard about earlier today. And so that is the point. They are taking our homes fraudulently. So I have done 10 of these worksheets and foreclosures, and this is on the suspicious documents. This is the list of these items that are suspicious, and so far of the 10 on Recon Trust, 70% had false notarizations, 90% had false signatures, 10% of the assignments were recorded after the notice of default, which makes the default void, just like that. 50% had servicers illegally named as assignees. You know, in other words, MERS gave it to, you know, Back Home Loan Servicing, or B of A, successor by merger to Back Home Loan Servicing. That's a servicer. That's illegal. 50, so half of them had that. Half of them had impossible beneficiaries named, like MERS gives it to the U.S. Bank National Association for CSMC Mortgage-Backed Securities 2007-1. 30% have fake attorneys in fact. 100% have fake agency designations. That's because typically on all the notice of defaults they have Recon Trust as agent for the beneficiary, and it's a false beneficiary. So it's a false agency. Does that make sense? 40% have missing false beneficiary or forged substitutions. And of course the law that goes with this is that you have a forged substitution, you cannot have clear title, you cannot have a valid notice of default. 90% of the assignments had assignments recorded after the mortgage-backed security trust cutoff date, and that's because one was missing an assignment, and so they didn't have anything recorded, but they're missing the assignment. So actually 100%, if the assignment had been recorded, it would be 100% here. I couldn't find any so far using defunct lenders. However, in other foreclosure mills, for example, like the one I showed you earlier with American Home Loan Servicing, is that really an entity that was in existence at that time? So on your documents, you can run through and do that checking. I just simply don't have time to do all of it. I'm cherry picking. I'm taking the easy stuff. It's all fraudulent. Let's start with that and let's see what action we can get with it. 100% of them had MERS on the document somewhere. Many of them had MERS assigning value and the notes, the beneficial interest in the notes. They do not have the authority to do so. And I've put here, of course, again, that on every deed of trust, on these are all securitized loans, so all of these documents were forged and faked in that back room. And MERS claims to be both an agent and a principal with respect to the same property right, and that's an impossibility. And it does make a mockery out of our property laws and records. 100% had a violation of at least one document violating the OCC cease and desist order of April 2011. And 80% had violations of contempt of court of the consent judgment, and so they would be in contempt of court on those judgments. 100%, by the time you add up all of these frauds and forgeries, 100% of the notices of default were void. Now, this is just 10 examples on Recon Trust. Some of these properties have already been foreclosed and sold. So you've got anyone that had a void sale, it was 100% void because the notice of sale was based on a void notice of default. And then at least one so far has actually been sold to someone else. And so that sale and that grant deed are also void, and it's as if it never happened because the whole system has been void. So we've actually got now proof of the entire schematic of void documents. Recon Trust on these, all of these that I have found so far have this level of violation on the documents. And I just want to bring to your attention that according to Foreclosure Radar, since on its history, Recon Trust has foreclosed and taken back already in California over 598,000 homes. So we understand. We know now beyond the shadow of a doubt that every last one of those was illegal. And this is a massive problem that we have to bring to a halt. This is our update Friday, and I'm going to finish this. I'm going to get this over to the Attorney General's office. I want you to get every owner you know on the planet in your neighborhood. Let them know that we are fighting back, that we do have power. My office, just yesterday, I have people helping me, thank goodness. We've printed up over 300 of the flyers and the letters and envelopes and mailing them out to listen to this, it's 310 people, homeowners in Sonoma County that are facing auction by the end of March. We have over 300 just to March 31st. And then after that to July, we have another 383 that are facing. So that's my goal for next week, is to print up another 300-400 letters, and I'm just going to send them out to everybody in Sonoma County. This is what we need to do. It's a few $100. If you can afford it, please do that for your county. Do that for your state. Remember, on my website, Homeowners for Justice, I just want to show you here real quick where you can go to find these flyers. It's under Activism Solution, Share the News. And what we've got here is those little videos from various and sundry elected officials around the country that are standing up and stepping up for the people. And then right here, mail out these flyers to anyone facing foreclosure auction. And for California, Washington, Oregon, Arizona, and Nevada, I can help you by sending you a list of people facing auction, because I subscribe to Foreclosure Radar. Or you can join Foreclosure Radar and get that list for yourself. And it gives you the addresses and property addresses and owner names. Here is the flyer that you can send. This is for the country. So if you don't want a county flyer, if you just want to send the country flyer, that's fine. What I sent was for Sonoma County. This is the flyer we sent here. You'll notice that Sonoma County, which is not a very large county, we sell about 4,500 homes a year. We've had over 12,000 already foreclosed and taken back by the banks or sold to third parties. Right now, 761 facing auction, and we have 22% upside down loans. That's 31,000 homeowners in this county are in the pipeline feeder for foreclosure. And literally, unless and until we stop the foreclosure mills, we are going to just be foreclosed. They will not stop until we stop them. So despite all of these judgments and all of these wins, We need to take that into an action mode, and we need to get our documents, do the analysis, print up the owner statements, blast them out to the media, and try to break through that silence, that black hole. Because the media, I swear, has been told they are not supposed to tell anybody what's going on. Anyway, it's been a great Friday. We've got some, one more thing I wanted to show you before I go. Petition. This is a county petition. Mendocino County, I tell you, these activists are really on target. And this is one thing that they have done. They've written a petition, and this is what they're sending out. And I'm suggesting that these are ideas that you could duplicate in your county, in your state, anywhere in the country. You can use signon.org. That's what they're doing here. And then you just send that out, blast it out, send it to me. I'm going to stick these petitions on a page. I'm going to start having a petition page. That way anyone around the country can look at the petitions and sign them. It really helps if you get signers in your own county. But nevertheless, the more effort that we put forth as just the few activists that we are, the more it'll spread and the more people will join. So what they wrote, this is true. Because the laws are not being followed, the Mendocino County tax base is diminished and services are impacted. Duh. Banks are not in compliance with the Homeowner Bill of Rights, plus all the other laws we've talked about. There is evidence of foreclosure fraud, and Mendocino County is losing money. That's why I signed a petition to Susan Ranachak. She happens to be the recorder in the Mendocino County Assessor's Office. And what they're saying to Susan is, we the voters urge Susan to investigate suspicious foreclosures in Mendo County by sending an affidavit of authority to the foreclosing entity. Will you sign the petition? You know, here's hoping. Let's also, I would recommend that you include in this that they do an audit, that they get this county supervisors to pay for an audit of the documents, of the foreclosure documents. The fact is, they don't even have to do that if every owner would step up and do what I'm showing you how to do. Because if Mendocino County had 500 owners, 100 owners, even 100 owners that stepped up and did what Jed did on his documents and pointed out the fraud, sent it to the DA, and delivered it, hand delivered to the DA, to the county supervisors, to the recorder's office, and to the sheriff. And then he's going to send it to media stations. That's when it's going to make a difference. That's what we have to do. Thanks, guys. It's been a great Friday. Lots of news going on, and we look forward to having some more Weekdays Live next week. Talk to you soon.